Hebrews. This is Prophets of Awakening. This is our evening Sabbath class. This is 11th of June, 2022. We'll be dealing with, we'll be back in Nahum, chapter 3 for our Bible discussion. I want to say, ask everybody to like, share, subscribe to Prophets of Awakening, and hit the notification button. And this is, for those that don't know, it's a non-Messianic channel. We deal with Tanakh and the Torah. Shalom and welcome to Prophets of Awakening, and welcome to our evening Sabbath class. We're going to do our moment of silence, our evening prayer, our songs, and then we're going to a little current event. Okay? This our evening, our moment of silence is for our Creator, Yahweh, and His Redeemer, the Lord host, and all that they are doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance. O Lord, we pray unto the Lord, our God. We make our confessions. O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping covenant and mercy to them that love thee and to them that keep thy commandments. O Lord, righteousness belongs unto thee, but unto us a confusion of face as it is this day. To the men of Judah, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and unto all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries whither thou hast driven us, because of our trespass, and we have trespassed against thee. As it is written in the laws of Moses, all this evil has come upon us in the land of our captivities, here in the Americas, Caribbeans, Great Britain, and Africa. O Lord, according to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee, and let thy anger and thy fury be turned away from thy city Jerusalem, and thy people, and thy holy mountain. O Lord, hear his prayer, and cause thy face to shine upon thy sanctuary and thy people for your sake. O Lord, open thine eyes and incline thine ears to hear and behold our condition. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, hearken and do, and defer not, for thine own sake. For your people need you so very much in this hour. Peace be on you. Okay. And with that being said, I'm going to read the Psalms. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read Psalms 80. It's a prayer for restoration. It is, give ear, O shepherds of Israel, thou that leadest Joseph like a flock, and thou that dwellest between the cherubim, shine forth before Ephraim and Benjamin and Manasseh. Stir up thy strength and come and save us. Turn us again, O God, and cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. O Lord God of hosts, how long wilt thou be angry against the prayers of thy people? Thou feedest them with the bread of tears, and givest them tears to drink in great measure. Okay. Thou art brought a vine out of Egypt. Thou hast cast out the heathen and planted it. Thou prepared the room before it, and didst cause it to take deep root, and it filled the land. The hills were covered with the shadow of it, and the boughs thereof like a goodly cedar. She sent out her boughs unto the sea, and her branches unto the river. Why hast thou then broken down her hedges, so that all they which pass by the way do pluck her? The boar out of the woods doeth waste it, and the wild beast of the field doeth devour it. Return, we beseech thee, O God of hosts. Look down from heaven, and behold, and visit this vine, and the vineyard which thy right hand hath planted, and the branch that thou made it strong for thyself. It is burned with fire, it is cut down. They perish at the rebuke of thy countenance. Let thy hand be upon the man of thy right hand, and upon the Son of Man, whom thou madest strong for thyself. So will not we go back from thee. Quicken us, and we will call upon thy name. Turn us again, O Lord God of hosts. Cause our face to shine, and we shall be saved. So that was Psalms 80, prayer for restoration. It's a Psalm of Asaph. Any comments? Okay, so I was looking at how that he says in 17, 18, 19, it says, let thy hand be upon the man of thy right hand, and upon the Son of Man, whom thou made it strong for thyself. It says, so will not we go back from thee, quicken us, so raise our spirit, and we will call upon thy name. Turn us again, O Lord God of hosts, cause thy face to shine, and we shall be saved. Okay. So with that being said, anybody got any current events? Okay, we got a couple right here. I don't know if anybody heard about it, but they had a march on Washington.
It is inspiring to see our community here calling for action.
March for Our Lives is a youth-led movement that aims to eliminate gun violence in our country.
You can't go a week without having a shooting. There's been over 200 shootings just this year, and over 40 since Uvalde shooting, in which 21 were killed.
This trend has students, teachers, and parents concerned for the future, and Simon Richardson tells us what it's like to go to school in this day and age.
It's scary. I mean, you go to school each day wondering, will our school be the next school that's on the news? Will Boise High be the next school that gets attacked? And every time there's a lockdown or a shelter in place, our stomachs drop, and it's scary. It's hard living in a constant state of fear.
The rally also included a counter-protest led by the Liberty Dogs, who came out to protect Second Amendment rights. I spent about an hour at the rally, and everything proceeded peacefully.
A guy with a gun can't walk around with a gun.
I tried to get some interviews, but everybody I asked declined. March for Our Lives organizers told us they weren't there to advocate against firearms.
We are not in support of taking away guns or anything like that. We're not anti-gun. We believe in increased gun safety, gun awareness.
This issue has strong opinions on both sides. But these high school students say they don't want to be afraid at school anymore, and they're tired of seeing other students across the country lose their lives while they're at school.
And we're just speaking up against the amount of gun violence in America, asking our legislators to act and do something and make changes to keep us all safe.
Steve Dent, Idaho News 6.
Okay, any comments? Okay, you got one more video. Like I said, I knew that was coming.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection said Thursday Donald Trump was at the center of a violent conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 election. In a primetime hearing, the committee revealed Trump's own Attorney General, William Barr, as well as Trump's daughter Ivanka, thought there was no basis for Trump's claims of election fraud. Committee Chair Benny Thompson said January 6th was the culmination of an attempted coup by Donald Trump, who supported the mob's chants of "Hang Mike Pence. Thompson compared the January 6th insurrection to the ransacking of Washington, D.C. by British forces more than 2 centuries ago.
But unlike in 1814, it was domestic enemies of the Constitution who stormed the Capitol and occupied the Capitol, who sought to thwart the will of the people to stop the transfer of power. And so they did, so at the encouragement of the President of the United States. The President of the United States trying to stop the transfer of power, a precedent that had stood for 220 years.
Committee co-chair Liz Cheney, one of just 2 Republicans on the panel, revealed multiple Republican lawmakers sought pardons from Trump after January 6th. After headlines, will spend the rest of the hour airing excerpts from Thursday's historic hearing. In Michigan, the FBI arrested Republican gubernatorial candidate Ryan Kelly at his home Thursday morning over his role in the January 6th Capitol assault. Kelly faces charges including engaging in acts of physical violence, knowingly entering restricted grounds, property destruction, and disorderly conduct. He's among some 840 people charged over the insurrection so far. In Maryland, an employee opened fire on his coworkers at a manufacturing plant in rural Washington County Thursday, killing 3 people and critically injuring a 4th. Maryland State Police say the 42-year-old suspect then fled the scene, but was later tracked down, wounded, and arrested after an exchange of gunfire that left a state trooper injured. According to the Gun Violence Archive, there have been over 270 mass shootings across the United States so far this year. In Texas, the chief of police for the Uvalde School District is defending officers against charges they failed to act as an 18-year-old gunman slaughtered 19 4th graders and their 2 teachers in May. Pete Arredondo told the Texas Tribune he spent more than an hour in the hallway of Robb Elementary School calling for tactical gear, a sniper, and keys to get inside the locked classroom where the shooter had holed up. Meanwhile, the New York Times reports Uvalde police delayed entering the school even as they became aware that some children urgently needed medical treatment. The New York Times reports 1 hour and 17 minutes passed before police finally entered the classroom. By then, 60 officers had assembled on the scene. Body cam footage reveals one officer said, quote, "People are going to ask why we're taking so long." Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is asking the United States and other allies for the rapid delivery of more heavy weaponry, saying it's critical to the fight against Russia's advance in the eastern Donbas region. Ukraine's military claims that soldiers continue to hold ground in the industrial part of Severodonetsk while battling Russian troops street by street. Elsewhere, Ukraine says 3 civilians were killed and 5 wounded by Russian shells falling on the city of Kharkiv. Meanwhile, a court in Russian-controlled eastern Ukraine has sentenced 2 Britons and a Moroccan to death, accusing them of being mercenaries for Ukraine's army. In Brazil, blood has been found in a boat belonging to a suspect in the disappearance of British journalist Dom Phillips and the Brazilian researcher Bruno Araújo Pereira. Investigators say they're sampling the blood to see if it came from one or both of the 2 men. The pair were reported missing on Sunday while working on a book project about conservation efforts in remote part of the Amazon that's become a haven for illegal mining, fishing, and international drug trafficking. Dom Phillips' wife, Alessandra Sampaio, appealed in an emotional video for Brazilian authorities to intensify the search efforts.
Why is that happening? I just don't want him and Bruno to suffer. They're in the jungle. There's a lot of cruelty. I'm heartbroken.
The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has handed over the results of its probe into the killing of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh to the International Criminal Court. Separate investigations by Al Jazeera, the Associated Press, and CNN have all concluded it was Israeli forces that shot and killed Abu Akleh on May 11th as she covered an Israeli raid on the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. This week, Secretary of State Antony Blinken was confronted by a journalist over the Biden administration administration's continued support for Israel and Saudi Arabia after the killing of journalists, including Jamel Khashoggi and Shireen Abu Akleh.
Why is there no accountability for Israel or Saudi Arabia for murdering journalists? It is one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a journalist in Palestine.
I deplore the loss of Shireen. She was a remarkable journalist, an American citizen, as you all know. And there, too, we are determined to follow the facts and get to the truth of what happened. No, they've not yet been, I'm sorry, with respect, they have not yet been established. We're looking for, no, they've not. We were looking for an independent, credible investigation.
Blinken was questioned by journalist Abby Martin. Following Blinken's remarks, the Biden administration said Thursday Israel should lead the investigation into Abu Akleh's killing. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has met with China's Minister of National Defense. The pair had a brief meeting scheduled on the sidelines of the Shangri-La Dialogue, a gathering of world leaders and military officials in Singapore. The meeting comes amidst tension between the U.S. and China over Taiwan and North Korea, and as the Biden administration presses ahead with plans to arm Australia with nuclear-powered submarines. The United Nations nuclear watchdog warns Iran has begun removing surveillance cameras from nuclear sites, setting back efforts to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Rafael Grossi, the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, said Thursday the move could leave inspectors unable to detect whether Iran is producing weapons-grade uranium.
What we are seeing is because of the decision that is been announced to us today, is a decrease of the visibility that the agency is going to have about what's happening in Iran. And of course, that this is something I deplore.
Grossi called on Iran to reverse what he said would be a fatal blow to talks aimed at restoring a deal to allow Iran to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes in exchange for relief from sanctions. Former President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. Iran insists.
Any comments on anything you heard?
Shalom, how long you think they're going to investigate January the 6th? How long you think that's going to carry on?
They're dragging on the rest. I figure to the rest of the year, just to make people think they're really doing something about it. But you know, they ain't gonna be. I don't really think nothing big gonna come out of it.
Right, exactly. When they have all the evidence right there on video.
Right, exactly. Is there something? I mean, that's a charade with the Iran nuclear deal too. That's a charade. Yeah. There's something. Yeah, I think this is pretty interesting.
One of the most famed rulers of all of history. The story of her life is the stuff of legend, seductive affairs, shrewd politicking, war, murder, propaganda, the rise and fall of civilizations. It has it all. She entered the world at a time of civilizational upheaval. By the time she left it, nearly everyone she loved was dead, and the newly minted Roman Empire had defeated a once mighty Egypt, ushering in a new era of human history. Welcome back to Nutty History. Today, we're exploring the life and death of Cleopatra, the queen who stood between two empires. Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of this video may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. Cleopatra was holed up in her own tomb in Alexandria, surrounded by heaps of royal treasure. The forces of Octavian, the soon-to-be first emperor of Rome, had her surrounded. They had just taken the city, This was it, the last gasp of an Egyptian empire that had stood for thousands of years. In Cleopatra's lap lay her dying lover, Mark Antony, bleeding to death from a self-inflicted stab wound. He had run himself through with his own sword after getting a letter from Cleopatra saying that if he were reading this, she had already killed herself. She hadn't yet, of course, but it was too late. When news reached Antony that she was still alive, a group of his closest advisors took him, bloodied and dying, to her tomb. There he slipped away in Cleopatra's arms. Overcome with grief, Cleopatra wailed and smeared Antony's blood all over herself. She would join him soon in whatever Roman or Egyptian underworld awaited them after death. She would burn the tomb down, with her and Antony and a fortune of treasure inside, a kind of final tragic consummation of their love, and a big middle finger to Octavian. But before she could follow through, she was found by Gaius Proclulus, a close companion of Octavian's, who managed to climb through a window and stop her. She was allowed to embalm Antony and give him a proper burial. But in the days that followed, Cleopatra the queen seemed to slip away. A prisoner in her own tomb, or possibly her own palace, the accounts vary, she shed her regal air and dressed only in a simple tunic. But she was still as fierce and defiant as ever. When she met Octavian one last time, she spoke directly and bluntly. One of the only direct quotes attributed to Cleopatra, recorded by the Roman historian Livy, was, quoting, "I will not be led in a triumph." Octavian wanted nothing more than to bring Cleopatra back to Rome and parade her around in her defeat, a humiliating march known as a triumph. Cleopatra would have none of it, though. She'd go out on her own terms. But let's go back. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was one of a long line of Egyptian pharaohs who were not actually Egyptian. He and Cleopatra were of Macedonian Greek descent and ruled over the Ptolemaic kingdom, founded in 305 BC by Ptolemy I Soter, who declared himself pharaoh after a power struggle following the death of Alexander the Great in 323, who had conquered Egypt 10 years prior. The 300 years between Alexander the Great and Cleopatra have become known as the Hellenistic period. During this time, Egypt was Greco-fied in a lot of ways, and as a result, Cleopatra's early education was steeped in the tradition of the Greek philosophers. Under the tutelage of Philostratos, she learned about the Greek art of oration, wrote Greek medical works, and had an unlimited access to the vast library of Alexandria, probably the most extensive library in the world at that time. She was one of the few Ptolemaic rulers to learn Egyptian, but she didn't stop there. Cleopatra learned a staggering number of languages, including Ethiopian, Hebrew, Arabic, Syrian, Median, Parthian, Latin, and Troglodyte, in addition to her native Koine Greek. Her abilities as a polyglot made her renowned for being able to converse with people from all over the Mediterranean without the need of a translator. A useful skill if you have ambitions to grow your empire, which she certainly did. But she wasn't a pharaoh yet. It would be several years and a whole lot of drama before she eventually ascended to the throne. Cleopatra was born in a tumultuous time for the Egyptian Empire. The Ptolemaic kingdom was holding on by a thread, and had been for pretty much all 300 years of its history. Rome was quickly becoming the world's leading power, and by 60 BC, Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy XII, was in the hot seat. In 58 BC, Rome annexed Cyprus, which had been ruled by Ptolemy's brother, Ptolemy of Cyprus. The Romans accused him of aiding pirates who were wreaking havoc on their shipping routes. Rather than face exile, Ptolemy of Cyprus committed suicide, a decision that proved quite popular for a lot of the defeated rulers around this time. Throughout the whole ordeal, Ptolemy XII remained relatively silent. But with the Egyptian economy in a deep recession, this show of weakness was the last straw. Ptolemy was forced out of Egypt, exiled to the outskirts of Rome with his daughter, an 11-year-old Cleopatra. They found refuge in the villa of Pompey the Great, a powerful Roman general who was then part of the First Triumvirate, a secret three-way alliance between Pompey, Julius Caesar, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, who were conspiring to overthrow the Roman Republic and set up their own form of government. Basically, they wanted to be emperor, but the complex set of checks and balances within the Republic wouldn't allow that. So they created this shadowy pact, vowing to help each other consolidate power. Obviously, backstabbing would ensue. Et tu, Brute? At Pompey's villa, a young Cleopatra met Julius Caesar. Seeds were sown for a future romance that would alter the course of history. But it would be a brief visit. With Pompey's help and the help of Pompey's ally, Aulus Gabinius, who was the Roman governor of Syria at the time, Ptolemy regained his throne. In 55 BC, Gabinius invaded Egypt and deposed Berenice IV, who had been sitting on the throne since Ptolemy's exile. Berenice was Ptolemy's daughter, and there was a lot of animosity between the two. Berenice wanted Ptolemy to remain in exile, but Ptolemy's Roman connections proved no match for her. Shortly after Ptolemy retook the throne, he had Berenice and her allies executed. Power took precedence over family, apparently. During Gabinius' invasion of Egypt, a young soldier named Mark Antony made a name for himself. As the Romans marched into Egypt, it is said he met a then 14-year-old Cleopatra, accompanying her father as he returned from exile. Years later, Antony would say that this was the moment he fell in love with this powerful femme fatale. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Ptolemy was back on the throne, but his kingdom was still in trouble. He was in debt up to his neck from paying off all the Roman leaders who helped him win back his throne. He eventually managed to secure valuable trade partnerships with kingdoms in East Africa and India, and over the course of the next 4 years, he built Egypt back into a respectable empire. However, Ptolemy still owed a lot of money upon his death in 52 BC, which was then passed on to Cleopatra. In 52 BC, Ptolemy died and left the keys to the empire and his debt in the hands of Cleopatra. She took them and ran. At this point, it's probably worth mentioning that the Ptolemaic kingdom was full of interbreeding. Brothers and sisters were marrying all the time in order to preserve the Ptolemaic line over the course of its history. Cleopatra herself was most likely a product of interbreeding, conceived between Ptolemy XII and his sister, the mysterious Cleopatra VI Tryphina, who was somehow obscured from the historical record and of which not much is known. Cleopatra had several siblings. We've already met her sister Berenice IV, who briefly ruled Egypt until she was executed by her own father. Cleopatra also had two younger brothers, Ptolemy XIII and Ptolemy XIV, and a younger sister, Arsinoe IV. As per her father's wishes, when Cleopatra became pharaoh, she married her brother Ptolemy XIII, and they served as co-rulers. Cleopatra was a woman, and traditions of the time required that any female ruler have a regent or co-ruler, even if it was just for show. We don't know much about the intimacies of this marriage. Ptolemy XIII was only 11 at the time, and there isn't any evidence that they consummated the marriage. But we do know that a rivalry emerged that eventually broke out into a civil war. In 48 BC, a now 15-year-old Ptolemy XIII didn't like how much attention Cleopatra was getting. Ptolemy, being the male heir, should have been the sole ruler. However, his older sister was clearly the better ruler. Her face was starting to get minted on coins. She was the one making all the important decisions. Her signature was on all the important royal documents, and he was being left behind. With the help of a powerful and influential inner circle, Ptolemy managed to oust Cleopatra, who went into exile for a second time, first to nearby Thebes, and later to Roman-controlled Syria. A full-on civil war erupted. To complicate matters, Cleopatra and Ptolemy's sister, Arsinoe IV, then threw her hat into the ring for the title of Pharaoh of Egypt. The sibling rivalry was taken to new heights, but Cleopatra refused to accept defeat. In 48 BC, she set her sights on Julius Caesar, who would eventually help her win her empire back. At this point, the first triumvirate, that alliance between Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus, had shrunk to a duumvirate. Crassus had died in 53 BC, and Caesar and Pompey were fighting each other in a Roman civil war to essentially decide who would become the first emperor of Rome. Pompey was losing badly. In a last-ditch effort, he sought refuge in Egypt. Ptolemy had given him 60 ships and 500 troops earlier that year, and Pompey figured he had an ally in the south. He didn't, though. In a cutthroat move, Ptolemy manipulated the rivalry between Pompey and Caesar, luring Pompey to Alexandria and then sending a team of assassins to decimate him on his own boat. He then presented Pompey's embalmed head to Caesar, who had arrived in Alexandria shortly thereafter, thinking Caesar would be thrilled that his rival had been eliminated. But he wasn't. Whether it was genuine disgust or a feigned politically motivated about-face, Caesar was said to have been horrified by the act and began imploring Ptolemy and Cleopatra to end their feud and figure out a way to make peace. Cleopatra, clever as ever, saw an end, a way to get the entire Roman Empire on her side and win back Egypt. At this point, she had made her way back to Egypt from Syria, but she was still on the outside looking in, camped out in the city of Pelusium on the eastern edge of the Nile Delta. One night, while Ptolemy lay sleeping, content with the fact that his sister was miles away and that he still had the upper hand in negotiations with Caesar, Cleopatra snuck into Caesar's quarters at the Palace of Alexandria. According to the historian Plutarch, she hid in a rolled-up rug, which was delivered to Caesar by Cleopatra's assistant, Apollodorus. It's uncertain whether this account is legend or fact, but we do know that once she met Caesar, Cleopatra was very, very convincing. A love affair blossomed between the two. An impassioned Caesar became committed to helping his new lover. First, he jailed Ptolemy XIII. Then he tried some diplomacy, proposing that Cleopatra's other brother, Ptolemy XIV, and her sister Arsinoe ruled together in Cyprus. Yeah, that didn't go down too well. The older Ptolemy XIII broke out of prison and then teamed up with his sister Arsinoe. They amassed their armies and laid siege to Alexandria for several months between 48 and 47 BC. Throughout the long siege, Cleopatra and Caesar remained locked in the royal palace, where they apparently had a pretty good time. It was there where many believe Cleopatra conceived her first child with Caesar, whom she named Caesarion, or Little Caesar. Eventually, Cleopatra and Caesar defeated her rival siblings. Ptolemy XIII was killed, possibly drowned in a river on Cleopatra's orders, and Arsinoe was exiled to Ephesus. Cleopatra then married her other brother, Ptolemy XIV, who was still basically a child at this point, because, again, Cleopatra was a woman and needed a co-ruler, and Caesar had to be getting back to Rome, though not before he and Cleopatra took a romantic cruise down the Nile to celebrate their victory, on a magnificent 300-foot ship complete with dining rooms, promenades, holy shrines, and all kinds of seductive bells and whistles. Cleopatra was now fully in control. Caesar left Egypt later that year. He did have a wife back home and an empire to build, but he left before he ever saw his son. Illegitimate or not, the birth of Caesarion gave Cleopatra a new status. She transformed from queen into divine mother and now had the power of the Egyptian and Roman gods behind her.
See that I have two really big monitors on here, as well as my tower, which by
Cleopatra would journey up to Rome in 46 BC, where she would hold court in the 2 years before Caesar's murder. A golden statue of her even stood in Rome, depicting her in the likeness of the goddess Venus. But then came the Ides of March. Caesar was dead, and Cleopatra was left in an awkward position. She stuck around Rome for a while, trying to build a case that her son Caesarion was Caesar's rightful heir. However, Caesar had named his grandnephew Octavian as his heir, and the Roman people were not so fond of this Egyptian woman messing around in their politics. She sailed back to Alexandria shortly after, and perhaps seeing her carefully cultivated power slipping away, she gave her brother/husband Ptolemy XIV aconite and installed her son Caesarion as co-pharaoh of Egypt. In the meantime, Rome was thrown into another civil war. By 42 BC, Mark Antony and Octavian had emerged as the two top dogs in Rome. Initially, they agreed to split the Roman territory between them. Antony controlled the eastern regions and Octavian the west. Their relationship would gradually deteriorate, though. Once again, Cleopatra was right in the middle of it.
Okay, like I said, this is part of the story they didn't tell us about. All this going on. So like I said, it's been hidden out of history. A lot of this is in Daniel chapter 11. If you go read it, so they want you to think that Daniel chapter 11 is talking about something that's going to happen in the future with the Antichrist, but it's talking about a lot of what you just heard right here. And the main thing out of that I wanted people to get out of this was, you notice they showed, they told you that Cleopatra was Greek, but coming up in high school and all that, they want you to think that Cleopatra was this powerful Egyptian African queen. And they show her as being dark skinned and all that, but she wasn't. She was redheaded. Mark Anthony was redheaded. Julius Caesar was redheaded. They was all Europeans. And they wearing Egyptian attire, but they was European people. The whole 29th dynasty. Any comments? Okay, everybody good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I was asking everybody to, when they get the opportunity to watch the documentary that came out Thursday about, what is a woman? I got another clip from it to kind of bring it to light. Then we'll read Nahum chapter 3.
Today for our daily cancellation, we will respond to a video from a YouTuber named Professor Dave of the channel Professor Dave Explains, where presumably Professor Dave explains things. The channel has an impressive 2 million subscribers, and this video was sent to me by several people promising that it contains a formidable argument against my position on gender ideology. One person, in fact, says that Professor Dave debunks my movie, What is a Woman? And I'm quite interested to see that, so let's go through this together.
Everybody seems to be furious about trans people. Half of us are furious that they exist, and the other half are furious about what the other half is saying. I would like to jump in and see if I can clear up some of the ways that people are talking past each other. Now, it's no secret that I'm a bit on the liberal side, but rest assured, the left is not going to get away scot-free on this one. They're missing the mark on a few key points. But as tends to be the case, it's bigots on the right who are the main problem, so let's start there.
We're off to a rough start. Putting aside Dave's smug, know-it-all tone and demeanor, something that seems to be a matter of instinct for people like him, so I'm not going to hold it against him. The real problem is that in the very first sentence, he's already wildly and intentionally mischaracterizing his opponents. In 30 seconds, he gives us a straw man and an ad hominem. He's doing that in the first 30 seconds. He's beginning this way, which signals that he doesn't have much to offer beyond this point. Because if he actually planned on making a compelling argument, he wouldn't come out of the gate breezily dismissing millions of people as bigots. Sorry, not millions, billions. Because anybody who has a problem with basic concepts of gender ideology is a bigot, he says, which means that almost everybody in the world and who has ever existed in the world is a bigot. Professor Dave begins the proceedings with that declaration. He also lies about the nature of the opposing argument, and he does it in the laziest and frankly dumbest way imaginable. He says that the people on the other side are furious that trans people exist. Now, in reality, as he's well aware, we're not furious that trans people exist, but rather we deny the underlying premise of gender ideology. If we're furious about anything, it's that this ideology is being imposed on society, and especially on children, and it's causing great harm in the process. By saying that we're furious that trans people exist, he gets to dismiss all of us as a bunch of angry, spittle-flecked rage clowns, when he is also quite well aware that when it comes to this subject, nearly all of the angry, spittle-flecked rage clowns are on the other side of the discussion. Take, for example, the people threatening to kill me and accusing me of genocide for making a documentary where I am only visibly angry one time briefly when addressing a school board that covered up the rape of a student, so perhaps you'll excuse my emotions in that case. But the other point of this mischaracterization is to pretend that we're angry at trans people personally rather than critical of the claims made by trans activists. Overall, it's a mess, and we're only 30 seconds in. Let's continue.
The primary issue is people who deny transgenderism. These are the people who spew the tired Fox News talking points. Liberals say there are 89 genders and anyone can identify as a hamster, that sort of thing. It's a deliberate caricature of reality peddled by all the angry conservative dudes popping up in my feed lately who claim that nobody can define a woman. Let's all take a moment to acknowledge the problems that go along with the ambiguity of language. Sex and gender are different words that refer to different things. If you did not know that, now you do.
So we have another common rhetorical tactic from the left, and honestly, I'm quite disappointed to hear common rhetorical tactics when I was promised an utter destruction of my worldview. And I was looking forward to it. Professor Dave says it's a tired Fox News talking point that there are a lot of genders. But that's not Fox's talking point. That's his talking point. This is indeed the official position of the gender ideologue. They may disagree on how many genders, but they all agree that there are a lot more than 2. Some say there are infinite numbers. Facebook says there are 58. If this sounds insane, that's not Fox's fault. As for sex and gender being 2 different things, I totally agree. Sex refers to biology, while gender is a linguistic term that refers to words, but was co-opted by a pedophile sexologist named John Money and applied to people in a vague and ambiguous way. Dave never mentions that point. He doesn't seem to know where his own ideas came from, or else he doesn't want you to know. Ignorant or deceptive, you decide. From here, Professor Dave provides a basically correct definition of sex with a long digression into intersexuality, and then gets around to talking about gender. Let's listen to that.
I want to tell you about my third Thursday book club. This is not.
Gender is a different phenomenon. It is still biological, but it is a neurochemical construct. This means that ultimately it is still genetic in basis, but it absolutely is not determined merely by the sex chromosomes. It is tremendously more complicated, and researchers are still working to understand the biological basis of gender identity. Human psychology is complex. People need to deal with that. Thoughts and feelings are ultimately chemical phenomena. We all have a neurochemical profile that guides how we think and feel, and part of that is gender identity. The reason that we are just now becoming equipped to differentiate between the 2 phenomena is that in the vast majority of humans, somewhere between 99 and 99.9% of all people, gender identity aligns with biological sex.
So gender identity has a neurochemical basis because it's a feeling, and feelings can be traced back to brain activity. Okay, sure, I'll buy that. The question is whether those feelings reflect reality. That's the question. In anorexia.
Okay. See that?
Yes, a mess.
Ain't that something? Now that's, like I said, take that to everything. When these people came on the scene, most high, everything was plain. It's cut and dried. Look what they, you sit there looking. It ain't but it's only one way to get a child, a man and a woman. Now they say it's 58 different variations. Ain't that something? Can you imagine imposing all that on a 5 and 6 year old, 7-year-old, and I mean even 2 and 3 year olds, man? Yeah, the Most High gonna have to hurry up and come back. So that right there is that's a time bomb. It's crazy. Do something. Okay. So that was just a section out of the documentary. So, like I said, when you get found around to watching it, brace yourself. Okay. So, like I was breaking down this book of Nahum this morning, and I ended up reading. And I was tying it to the 10 lost tribes, and tying it to Nineveh and to Jonah and all that this morning. So I'm just gonna finish that off by reading chapter 3, and then we'll do a little breakdown. If anybody got any questions, then we'll close out. So it says, I'm in Nahum chapter 3. It says, "Woe to the bloody city! It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey departed not." So this is Nineveh. "The noise of a whip, and the noise of a rattling of the wheels, and the prancing of horses, and the jumping of chariots. The horsemen lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain, and a great number of carcasses. And there is none end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses, because of the multitude of the whoredom of the well-favored harlot, the mysteries of the witchcraft that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and families through her witchcraft. Behold, I am against thee, said the Lord of hosts, and I will discover thy skirt upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and the kingdoms thy shame. And I will cast abominable filth upon thee, and make thee vile, and will set thee as a gazing stock. And it shall come to pass that all that look upon thee shall flee from thee, and say, Nineveh is a laid waste. Who will bemoan her? Whence shall I seek comforters for thee? Art thou better than punctuous? No, that was saturated among the rivers, that the land of the waters round about it, whose ramparts were the sea, and her walls were from the sea. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. But said, put and Ludum were thy helpers, yet was she carried away. She went into captivity. Her young children also were dashed into pieces at the top of all the streets, and they cast lots for her honorable men, and all her men were bound in chains. Thou also shalt be drunken, thou shalt be hid, thou also shalt seek strength because of the enemy. All the strongholds shall be like fig trees with their first ripe figs, and they shall be shaken. They shall even fall into the mouth of the eater. Behold, thy people in the midst of thee are women. The gates of thy land shall be set wide open until thy enemies, the fire shall devour thy bars. Draw thee, O water, for the siege. Fortify thy stronghold. Go into clay and tread the mortar. Make strong the bricklings. There shall the fire devour thee. The sword shall cut thee off. It shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the locust. Thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spilleth and flieth away. Thy crown are as the locust, and thy captains as the great grasshopper, which camp in the hedges in the cold day, but when the sun arises, they flee away, and their place is not known where they are. The shepherds slumber, O king of Assyria. The nobles shall dwell in the dust. The people is scattered upon the mountains, and no man gathereth thee. There is no healing of thy bruise. Thy wound is grievous. All that hear the bruit of thee shall clap their hands over thee, for upon whom have not thy wickedness passed continuously. So that was chapter 3 of Nahum. And like I said, I'm showing you, he's talking about Nineveh, right? And then you have to ask yourself, you go to let's look at it right quick. Let's go to the New Testament. I want to show you how crazy this is. I'm in the New Testament, right? And so, let me get it. In the New Testament. Okay. So let me get it. Let me get this. Give me a minute. Okay. 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 Anyway, it was story of Jonah. in the whale. Jonah was on his way to Nineveh when he was thrown into the ocean. So you got to add that up. They don't make no sense. When you put that in the New Testament, tied to Jesus and all that. What Jonah got to do with anything in the New Testament and Nineveh? But anyway, we're gonna go in a little deeper than that. So like I was saying, what's the purpose of it? The only purpose I see is that they use that as a sign for the JC, that every prophet got to have a sign, and his sign was the sign of Jonah. So 3 days and 3 nights, like Jonah was in the belly of the whale. So the Son of Man gonna be 3 days, 3 nights in the earth. That's the only purpose I can see, and then bringing that about. But it has no correlation to nothing. But anyway, so based on what I just read, I'm gonna go to Revelation right quick to show you how what these people done. I'm in Revelations, right? And I'm in okay, I think it's chapter 12. Yeah, not 12, become 18. Okay, yeah, here you go. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna shine light on what I just read in Nineveh chapter Nahum chapter 3, but I'm gonna read this, chapter 18, Revelation. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lit in his glory. And he cried mighty with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and become the habitation of devils. And the whole of every foul spirit, the caged and unclean bird, say, for all the nations have drunk of her wine, of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have continued fornication with her, and the merchants, see that? Merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacy. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. Okay, the 10 tribes there, 10 tribes in Nineveh. Come on. So he says, my people, that ye may be not protected of her sin, that ye receive not her plague, for her sins have reached under heaven, and God have remembered her iniquities, right? Keep going. Reward her even as she is rewarded, and double under her according to her work. Anyway, I'm going down. So we get on down here to 9. Kings of the earth who have committed fornication and live deliciously with her shall bemoan her and nominate for her, or when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Right? So standing afar for fear of her torment, saying, Atlas, Atlas, this great city, Babylon. See, let me show you how I told you about we could have trained the baboon to do this. They were placing this Babylon, they replacing Nineveh with Babylon. So it says Atlas, that great city, Babylon, that mighty city. For in 1 hour thy judgment come, and the merchants of the earth, see that? The merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, and no man shall buy her merchandise anymore. Now here you go. It's the thing that always amazed me back in the day. 12. The merchants of gold, silver, precious stone, pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet, all fine wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, all manner of most precious wood, brass and iron and marble. Here we go. Cinnamon, odors, ornaments, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour. All that we wasn't dealing with that. America ain't really dealing with this. This type of stuff is dealing with back in the ancient world, and it's dealing with around that area, around Israel, especially Israel. They need all these. Israel using fine flour, wine, and oil in the temple and all that, brass, chariots, anyway. So all this stuff is not pertaining to the day. So when you go back, let's go back. Based on what I just read now, let's go back to chapter 3. And I'll close out. Get some responses, then I'll close out. So I'm in back in Nahum chapter 3. Now watch this. So woe to the bloody city, right? Same as great city. It is all full of lies and robbery. The prey depart not. The noise of the whip, and the noise of the rattling of the wheels, and the prancing of horses, and the jumping of chariots. The horsemen leap both The horsemen leaped up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain. Now watch this. I mean, everybody that's been in church and Christianity know in Revelations they say the blood of the horses gonna reach up to the horse's bridle, right? Watch this. There is a multitude of slain, the great number of carcasses. There is no end to their carcasses. They stumble upon the carcass. So carcasses all over the place, up to the horse's bridle, right? 4, because of the multitude of the whoredom of the well-favored harlot, right? The mistress of witchcraft, that selleth nations, see that nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcraft. So all the nations of the earth they're dealing with her. It's Nineveh, right? 5, behold, I am against thee, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will discover thy skirt upon thy face, and I will show the nations thy nakedness, and thy kingdoms thy shame, and I will cast abominable filth upon thee, and make thee vile, and I will set thee as a gazing stock, right? And it shall come to pass that all that look upon thee shall flee from thee, and say, Nineveh is laid waste, and who will bemoan her? See that? He said all the people in this a coastal city, coastal nation, port. It's known for all this traffic and ships, right? So he says 7, and I say, and it shall come to pass that all that look upon thee shall flee from thee, and say, Nineveh is laid waste. Who will bemoan her? Say the merchants of the earth shall bemoan her in Revelations. When shall I seek comforters for thee? Art thou better than the pompous know that was saturated among the rivers? See that had the rivers round about it, whose ramparts were of the sea, and her walls were from the sea. Ethiopia, right? It go some of the nations, and we know these nations right here got much merchandise. Ethiopia, Egypt, and her strength is her strength, and it was infinite. Put and looting were thy helpers, yet was she carried away. She went into captivity. Her children also were dashed into pieces at the tops of all the streets, and they cast lots for her honorable men, and all her great men were bound in chains. Thou also shall be drunken. See that? Say you're going to drink the cup of wine. Say all the nations have drunken of the cup of her wine. All this coming from here, right here. Thou art also be drunken. Thou shalt be hid. Thou also shall seek strength through her enemies. And the stronghold shall be like fig trees with the first ripe figs, and they shall be shaken, and shall even fall into the mouth of the eater. Behold, a people in the midst of thee are women, and the gates of thy land shall be set wide open until to thy enemies. Here you go. He says he's going to look off from afar off. The merchants of the world of the sea going to look from a distance at thy burning, right? This in Revelation. The fire shall devour thy bars. Draw thee water for the siege. Fortify the stronghold. Go into clay and tread the mortar. Make strong the bricklings. There shall be a fire devour thee. The sword shall cut thee off. It shall eat thee up like the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the cankerworm. Make thyself many as the locust. Thou hast multiplied thy merchants. See that? Thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. Same wording, right? The cankerworm spoileth thee and flieth away. So you say, what's going on? What's going on? Like I said, 10 tribes there, and if they had no teachers on going back to Israel, so he came and destroyed Nineveh, and then they had to leave, but a lot of them decided to keep going into Africa. They didn't go back to Israel. They decided going Africa to where they at today, to this very day. Ain't no bed or ain't no information, and ain't nothing referring to when you understand the truth of the matter to them coming way over here to America. The bull crap. So anyway, I'm showing you how same way in Egypt. It was a bunch of Israelites, they didn't want to leave Egypt. But he came with the 10 plagues. He shut it down. They had to leave. Same thing he getting ready to do over here. You got a bunch of Negroes don't want to leave. They comfortable. They don't give a damn about their heritage, like Esau. They want to they want it to stay like it is. They can care less about waking up and finding out they Israelites. But anyway, I'm showing you how they done tricked that off in the Revelations. It's all they got all this from here, Nineveh. What's going on with Nahum? And then making it like it's a futuristic prophecy tying it to JC, who they created and concocted at the Council of Nicaea, who was none other than Serapis. Okay. So, any comments on that?
I just have a question. You were talking about Jonas, right? And you was looking for that in the New Testament. Look at Matthew chapter 12, starting at verse 38.
Matthew chapter 12.
Yes.
Matthew. Okay.
The sign of the prophet.
Oh, right. Chapter 12.
Yes, 12 and 38.
Okay. Yeah, 12 and 38 says the sign of Jonah. Then certain of the scribes and of the Pharisees answered, saying, Master, we would see a sign from thee. But he answered and said unto them, an evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonah. So you got to ask yourself, where the hell is this coming from? And when you understand what happened in the Old Testament all the way up to now, all of a sudden out of blue, now it's a sign of Jonah. Think about that. So, like I said before, what you're dealing with they got a huge library, the biggest library ever, right there in Egypt, Alexandria, Egypt, and they got this garden and created Serapis, and that's what they're doing, and they got all our records and all our books. This is how the New Testament came into existence. And they tying this God that they created at the Council of Nicaea, Jesus Christ, and they trying to find a way to put him in the Old Testament, because he ain't in the Old Testament. So they go and get this story of Jonah. Let me read it. So 39. But he answered and said unto them, the evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given unto it, but the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Now the men of Nineveh shall rise up in judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it, and cause they to repent of the preaching of Jonah, and behold, a greater than Jonah is here. See that? It don't make no sense, man. I mean, you can try to make some sense of it, but it's a waste of time. So my thing was, I could have swore it was a book of Jonah in the New Testament. That's what I was looking for. I was looking for the story of Jonah. That must be in one of these Gospels. But yeah. So anyway, right. So what do Nineveh got to do with Nineveh? The history of Nineveh. What did that got to do with it? He destroyed it back during the time when Nebuchadnezzar came. So what did Nineveh got to do with the New Testament and Jonah? And so if Jonah, if he did exist, he was put on a boat to go to Nineveh back during the time of when the 10 tribes was there, not now in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's crazy. So they reaching and grabbing and getting stuff to put this story together. They got in the New Testament. Yeah, like for another example, just for GP, let's go to Zechariah, because that's all Revelations is a combination of book of Zechariah, Daniel, Ezekiel, You know, they got stuff from all of them, and that's how they concoct the New Testament. Joel. So let's look at Zechariah right quick. I want to show you something. And you tell me. I'm in Zechariah chapter 4. It says, okay, let me see this 4. Let me get it. Yeah, chapter 6. I'm gonna start at verse 1. So it says, I turned and lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came 4 chariots out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were of brass, right? And in the first chariot there were red horses, second chariot black horses, in the third chariot white horses, and in the fourth chariot grizzle and bay horses. Ain't that in Revelation? That's where the four horsemen coming from, right here, Zechariah chapter 6. Already happened. It says, and in the then 4, then I answered and said unto the angel that talked with me, what are these, my Lord? And the angels answered me, said unto me, these are the 4 spirits of the heaven, which go forth from standing before the Lord of all the earth. So you say, what you talking about? So they're telling you in Revelation is the 4 horsemen. But right here, he's telling you these are 4 spirits. We're gonna break this down. So he says, then I answered and said unto the angel that talked with me, what are these, my Lord, right? So who are you gonna believe? These angels or these clowns over in Revelation? So it says, and the angel answered and said unto me, these are the 4 spirits of heaven. So what's a spirit? These are 4 angels, right? What angels? I'm in Ezekiel chapter 11. Ezekiel chapter 1, right? Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 1, okay? And it tells you right here in verse 3, the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel the priest, son of Buzi, in the land of the Chaldeans by the river Kabar, and the hand of the Lord was upon him. And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, a fire enfolding itself, and the brightness about it, and out of the midst of the color of amber, and out of the midst of his fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures. That's these 4 angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, right? And then you go to Ezekiel 25, and then you see them right there. There was a voice from the firmament that was over their head, over these 4 angels' head. They're carrying the Yahweh. They carry Yahweh on a sapphire stone. And when they stood and they let down their wings, and above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as appearance of a sapphire throne. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness of the appearance of a man above upon it. That's Yahweh. So angels are ministering spirits. So Ezekiel tell you these 4 horses is 4 is angels. The angels tell him it's 4 angels. The spirit of God that's standing before the Lord. That's these 4 angels. But over there in Revelation, this horsemen. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Come on. All right. So anybody got any comments on that? What anybody want to add to it? Okay, let me play this here.
Dear Black man, I had dreams of one day you holding my hand, walking me down the aisle, giving me off to another Black man that you saw face. High hopes that one day you would escape this system's fucked up grip. You were supposed to be the first man I loved, the first man that loved me. But how can I expect you to know how to be in my life when you don't even know how to be in your own? Snatched from your home, chain whipped and stripped from every piece of truth, culture, and knowledge that you have ever known. Dear Black man, my heart bleeds for you. My heart bleeds for little Black boys who never got the chance to become men. See, when you were a little boy, you weren't always taught to love because you were forced to work. Couldn't fathom fathom the idea of receiving love because before you hit puberty, your hearts and hands were already filled up with so much hurt. Dear Black man, my heart bleeds for you. My heart bleeds for the little Black boys whose childhoods have been robbed with no probable cause, to little Black boys who no longer believe in Santa Claus, to little Black boys who have been mentally enslaved, incarcerated, sold, shot, chained, and whipped, to little Black boys whose innocence have been stripped. I bleed for you. To Black man, you come from gold, diamonds, kings, and pharaohs. Can't wear your chain too low in the hood because then you looked at as a stunner. But my heart bleeds for the Will Browns of the world who couldn't enjoy blue winter because in Omaha they suffered a red summer. See, my heart bleeds for George Stinney, 14 years old, 90 pounds, wrongfully accused of murder because he didn't have the complexion for the protection and was sentenced to death. Sat on the Holy Bible as a booster seat. But dear Black man, when lifted by the Spirit of God, your soul they can't defeat. Dear Black man, I'll gracefully paint an image of your face in the sky with the colors in my mind, just so your royal legacy doesn't become myth. Those colors fade into shades of gray when I think of Abram Shipp and Thomas Smith, dripping with hues of blue when I think about James Cameron, who escaped with a fucking noose around his neck. Dear Black man, I know it's hard to find truth in who you are since the day they snatched you off your thrones. You've had to fight for your self-worth and respect. Dear Black man, I need you to know that you are the perfect definition of love. The type that makes the world spin. Dear Black man, you are the perfect definition of love, the type I have been searching for my entire life. The perfect synonym of worthy, virtuous, good, true, upstanding, high-minded. Dear Black man, don't let this villainous, corrupt system keep you blindsided. See, my heart bleeds. My heart bleeds for Trayvon Martin. My heart bleeds for Sean Bell. My heart bleeds for Oscar Grant. My heart bleeds for Kimani Gray. My heart bleeds for Armando Diallo. My heart bleeds for Kendrick McDade. My heart bleeds for Mike Brown. My heart bleeds for Eric Garner. Dear Black man, my heart bleeds. My heart bleeds. My heart bleeds. Dear Black man, guide our little Black boys so they can find a way back to being kings. Dear Black man.
Okay, so I'm gonna say shalom with that, and I'll see everybody on Tuesday night for the advanced Bible study at 8 o'clock. Okay, and don't forget about Shiloh. Shalom.
Shalom.
Okay.
Shalom.